Hello again and welcome to Roxy Colors. Today I'm going to show you how I created this homemade mask. It is half silver fox and half dog. I created the eyes with white fursuit eye mesh. We're going to take a look at our inspiration for the mask. It is half silver fox, half dog, and it was designed by my daughter and her friend. We are going to start off with the base of a Therian cat mask. You can get these on Amazon. And I'm going to create a snout to put on the mask, and I'm going to show you how I do it. First off, I get a piece of paper and I go ahead and I create the pattern. So this is the long side of the snout pattern, and it's the part that wraps around the snout. It's 6.5 inches long. Now let's measure the side. This, well, from the fold, it's 3 3/16 of an inch long. The two tips measure about 1 3/4 of an inch. I used high quality craft paper. It's 120 GSM. It is not cardstock. It's actually thicker than cardstock. And it was perfect for this mask snout because I used it actually for making journal books for like a cover. So I had plenty on hand. And so again, this is craft paper, high quality. I got it on Amazon maybe a couple of years ago. They don't sell it anymore. So maybe they sell a different brand, but they didn't have this one anymore. So you go ahead and you take your pattern and you trace it on the craft paper. And once you do that, you go ahead and cut it out. You know, I use the ruler to make sure things are straight. And I use this mat with a lot of ruler lines to help line everything up. It makes it so much easier to do it that way. And it needs to be folded. So I decided, since I didn't have a scoring tool, I decided to use an X-Acto knife. And I went ahead and just cut it slightly, just a tiny bit. Don't do it deep. And if you just do it slightly, you'll be able to bend those corners. But again, they must be lined up perfectly. I didn't use the X-Acto knife to bend this because it was just a small bend and it was very easy to do. Once you do that, you can go ahead and fold it together and just adjust. I realize that, I do everything real fast, so I make a lot of little mistakes. So I'm over here just kind of cutting away parts that don't need to stick out. Now it's time to fit it over the mask and see how it fits. It fits pretty good. So now it's time to mark where I'm going to glue, and that's where you start using your hot glue gun. Now I'm actually learning as I go. So there are things that I could have done differently, maybe better, but that's okay. This is a learning process for me, and hopefully it will help you as well. So I'm holding it on one side here and I'm marking it where I'm going to glue. Like I don't want to go too far up, I don't want to go too far down. So I'm going to go ahead and make those marks. So it looks like the marks are just right underneath the cheekbone. It's perfect symmetry there. Now it's time to add the hot glue. You got to be quick because this glue dries very fast. I put it on the side, but I also should have put it on top of the nose, the bridge of the nose. I did not, but this is a learning experience and I'm learning. Next time I'll put it on the side of the face and the top of the nose. Okay, so I'm going to continue to work and get this whole snout glued in. Just continue to watch my steps. Again, it's a learning experience. Because I didn't get the top of the nose, I'm doing it now. It's a little harder to do, but definitely doable. Okay, I think I'm done. I think it looks pretty good. I decided to add a little cutout for the top lip. Now, I learned something. It should have been a lot bigger of a cut and a lot deeper. Again, something I'm learning. Because we're going to be adding our own ears, we must cut off the ears of this mask. Now, we usually create larger eyes for these masks, but today we're going to do a smaller eye, only because we want it to be a little more realistic. But if you want cartoony eyes, definitely you can go bigger. Once I trace it out, I use the X-Acto knife just to cut a little bit. That way when I cut with the scissors, it helps it cut easier, because I don't know why my scissors aren't that great at cutting. Maybe I just need better scissors. Now let's take a look at our inspiration again. As you can see, half of the face is white. The other half is black and gray. So I'm gonna go ahead and add white felt because white is just harder to paint. And so I'm gonna glue on half of the felt on half of the face. Now when you do this, you have to do a little at a time, and then you have to kind of blend it with your fingers, like smooth it out, add the glue, and then smooth it out. So you'll be seeing me gluing and then rubbing and smoothing it out with my fingers. And you want to leave like no bubbles. I would say if you have a bend in there somewhere, I use the bend right there where the snout is, and I just left everything else pretty smooth. You should leave about an inch or an inch and a half to fold under the mask to glue it. Obviously, I will be cutting around the edges because the felt is a little too long. Here's where you see me cut the extra fabric off. Now remember when I talked about the extra fabric? Well, here it is. You see the little fold by the snout? That was the extra fabric that I couldn't smooth out completely. And I just put it on the edge there. I figured it was okay as long as I do the same thing to the other side so we have symmetry. So there should be a fold on the other side of the snout when I'm done. Again, I'm learning as I go. Maybe I won't do this next time. Maybe I'll find a different way. When you're folding the fabric in the back and gluing, make sure you leave that elastic alone. Even cut away at the fabric a little bit. You do not want to glue that elastic, and you do not want to accidentally cut it off as well. Now remember the fold in the snout? I folded it here after I glued everything, just the way I did on the other side for symmetry. Because it's black fabric and it's a photo, I know it's hard to see, but I thought I'd share it anyways. Okay, let's look at our inspiration. There is black going over the eye along with the ear, so I'm going to be adding some black on the white side of the face. Now I noticed that I put a little bit too much black over the white on the snout, so I'm going to cut out a piece of felt and I'm going to fix that. And voila, it's done. Okay, so now let's talk about the eyes. I did not film the eyes, cutting them out and folding it over. But basically what I did is I got an X-Acto knife and I slit it right in the middle of each eye. And then I got some scissors and I just cut to each edge. And I cut, so basically I cut vertical and also horizontal. And then I went ahead and tucked it in from the backside and glued it. And I really did kind of pull it tightly because you want to make sure it's a tight fit. So now I'm using a good acrylic black pen to cover up any of the dried glue little specks that I wasn't able to get out. It covers it very well. And you can probably use a different color if you have a different color fabric. Here I'm using another acrylic pen to outline the eye on the white side of the face. Now it's time to do some painting. I'm going to be painting, as you look at the picture, it's on the right side, but obviously it's actually on the left side. But it is the bridge of the nose. It's like a gray. It's not black, it's a dark gray. So I'm gonna go ahead and start painting that, and then I'll just work my way to the middle of the face with the other grays. Now we are going to start with the ears. I'm using foam paper, folding it in half. It's a large piece. So what I did is I cut this in half, and then I folded the part that I cut off, folded that in half. So I had two smaller pieces, and each piece was going to be for each ear. I did not show the process of how I figured it out, but I kind of just got a pencil and I drew the way I wanted the ears to be. So I'm cutting the first foam, and I'm cutting it to the size I want. You can do this with a piece of paper as opposed to using the foam. But what I did is I went ahead and used that piece of foam to size up the ear. Once I was happy, then I was able to use that as a pattern and cut out my second ear. I don't know if you've noticed, but I did cut the inner ears around the forehead just as a curve, just so you can see what I did to kind of size it up the way I wanted. Now that I have both ears, I'm gonna go ahead and take my felt fabric. I'm going to cut that in half, and I'm going to glue each ear on each piece of felt. Make sure you glue the ear around, like in the middle, so that you have fabric all the way around. While I'm holding the ear in place, I go ahead and start adding the hot glue. Right here, I'm adding it to the fabric. I'm adding it to the edges of the ear. Then I'm smoothing it out. And anywhere where there's no glue, I go ahead and add that. When you're done with the first ear, go ahead and start on the second ear. Once the ears are dry, go ahead and cut around each ear about an inch. And you can cut around it to make the folding easier, and then you start to glue. Pull and glue. This process is a little hard because you got to make sure the glue does not get on the felt, especially if it's a dark colored felt. You can really see it. Once both ears are glued and you have fabric on one side, you need fabric on the inside. You would take a second sheet of felt and you would trace the ear on it, cut it out, and you would glue it on the back side of the ear, the part where you had the white foam showing. So now both sides are covered. And I apologize for not filming that part. So we're gonna go ahead and glue these ears down towards the eyes. I'm going to hold it in place with my thumb and I'm going to start gluing. As you can see, I am using my reference. So I see where the ears are placed. They're pretty close to the eyes. Although again, these eyes aren't as big as in the illustration, but that's okay. I'm going to leave a little bit of room, but it's pretty close. Before attaching the second ear, it's probably wise to let the first ear fully dry because the ear was wrapped in 2 layers of fabric. Basically, it's a lot thicker and heavier, so it just needs a little more time to dry. Also, you'll notice that white diamond on the forehead, and on the white part of the face, there's also a little diamond and little black specks. That is all felt that I cut out and I glued on. You'll see more of it later, and I'm sorry I didn't film it, but those are things you can add. And because this is black fabric, I am using the acrylic black pen to cover up any of those little white specks from the glue. Okay, so we're done with this part. Now it's time to continue working on the ears. I'm using felt, and I'm also using some faux fur, and I'm just kind of measuring just to see where everything would line up. Now, of course, you could have created a pattern first with a piece of paper, and I didn't do that. I just used felt, and that's okay too. You do it any way that's easier for you. I believe this black fur is fur that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. It was a sheet, but it was wide and the fur went down. So what I do is I use a comb to make a split, like maybe 1.5 inches, something like that, and then I cut it. I brush it down and I cut it. So that way I can have strips of it. I think this fur is a lot better than some of the fur that you get on Amazon. Of course, if you buy the Therian cat mask that comes in a kit, usually that fur's better. But if you just buy the fur separate, I don't know, because I bought some, it's not as good. It's still doable though. The hair is usually a lot longer as well, and it falls out more. This one right here, much better. I also had a little piece of scrap hair, and I put it right in the middle on the forehead. Now we're just cutting the hair here, not the ear, just the hair. Another thing I forgot to film was the removable tongue and the fangs. They were all made out of foam, and the teeth were glued on with a glue gun, and the tongue has Velcro. We glued like a strip of Velcro on the tongue and on the inside of the mask, and so it can be removed. Here's a better look and a close-up of the little details that I cut out with felt for the face. Again, I was going for the inspiration of the drawing. Okay, so these are the strips of faux fur that I bought on Amazon. Now, these were not in a kit. They were sold separately. So they were a lot, the hair fell out a lot. They were longer, a little curlier, a little fuzzier, just more high maintenance. And so, you know, I learned, again, it works, but at the same time, I feel like I really like the other fur better. So, anyways, but I just wanted to show you so that you got a good idea of what I was working with. As you see on one side of the face, there is some gray fur. So I also bought some large cutout pieces of fur on Amazon, and they are not high quality either. Like, not compared to the pieces that I bought at I think it was Hobby Lobby, but you know, I'm sure Michael's or something has some good fur. But anyways, it's, again, it works, but next time I'll buy better fur. So I will actually be gluing this a little different. I'm putting the glue on the front of the fur towards the bottom. Now, I did brush it out first. I'm only putting a little bit, so I'm gonna do a little at a time because I don't want to mess up. But what I'm doing is I'm putting right sides together, like if you know anything about sewing. So you're going to put the fur on the front of the face. That's where you're gluing it, on the edge. And then we're going to fold it over. That way it kind of looks like, you know, there's a seam there, like, you know, a nice seam, as opposed to gluing it right on the mask from the back side. It would just look too sloppy. Now that it's dry, I'm just going to put some glue on the back and kind of fold it down a little bit to keep the fur down. Instead of popping up over the face, this will kind of keep it down a little bit. As you see in the illustration, there is black hair also behind the gray hair. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now. I didn't like the way the edge of this ear looked, and so I thought I would like to at least glue a little piece of hair. That way it just takes away from that hard edge. So I'm going to be laying this black fur on top of the wrong side of the gray fur, and I'm holding it very carefully with my hand as I glue. For some reason, this side's just a little limp, so I'm going to add an extra layer of black fur. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have added the fur, and the next thing we have to do are the eyes. We definitely have to add the eyes and the bend in the ear. What we did for the nose is we used foam, and we put a little bit of shiny stuff on there. I think it was like varnish or something, and we just cut it out and glued it on. We didn't have that foam clay. But next time I think we're going to go ahead and create a nose out of foam clay and use that instead. I totally forgot that the left ear was bendable because that's half dog. So I bought some wire, and this wire is thick enough to hold something heavy like this ear. And so I use wire cutters, and I'm going to try to shove the wire somewhere in the ear. I think it's probably going to be underneath the inside of the ear towards the front, and we'll try to get it in there, and then I'll glue it in place, by closing up the holes. Now remember, this was a mistake. So next time I would have put the wire inside while I was making it between the foam and the fabric, but I was able to fix it anyways. Yay, I was able to get it in. So all I need to do is just glue the felt so that it stays in there. And luckily, the faux fur that goes over the ear will cover the wire. Now that the glue is dry, let's go ahead and bend. Yes! It's awesome. Now we're using the eye mesh. You can get this on Amazon. Make sure to get the 0.8 mm because the 5 mm was just too small. I turn it around and I go ahead and I trace the outline of the eye. This one it's hard to see because it has that black fabric, but you'll be able to see it better when I do the other eye. Also outline it just a tiny bit bigger than the actual eye. That way when you paint the eye, you won't be able to see any white, unless that's what you want is white. Okay, here's our inspiration. Eyes together like this so you know exactly what eye is which, and then start working on that particular eye. Here are my acrylic pens, and now I just need to choose the right colors to, the best colors I can choose to match the eyes. This is the lightest yellow I have, so I have no choice but to use it, but it's okay. Layer of acrylic paint. I like to blow at it so that it kind of blows through the little holes. I'm not sure if I don't do that if it will dry that way, but I do it anyways. use my very best acrylic pens for the black and the white because, you know, those are colors that really need to be very opaque and as dark as possible, or as bright as possible. I'm going to go ahead and test it out just by putting the eye on the inside, moving it around, just so I know where to glue. But you don't want to cut too much, and you got to cut a little at a time because you just don't want any of that mesh sticking up and poking you anywhere in the face, but yet you have to have enough to glue it on as well. I had to skip a lot of the eye gluing, but here it is. It's done. It's finished. Finally, the piece is done. And see how the eyes are really beautiful, but they're not as cartoony as the illustration. And there's the ear bend. It's perfect. So we just absolutely love this. My daughter was so happy. We might replace the nose with a foam clay nose, but it's just gorgeous, and everybody loved it. When she went to this furry meetup, everybody really loved it. They thought it was very professional, and she's so in love with it, and we can't wait to do the next one. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. Maybe you can make one yourself. And if you learned something new and you like this video, please hit the like.